Hey guys, this is Kevin Karen with Precision Powerlifting Systems. I'm gonna do something a little philosophical today. But you've heard me talk a lot about judgment-free training and how this is really important. So when you get into high-level competition, right, how fast your decisions are gonna be the difference maker, right? And no matter what your competition is, right? So you see this a lot in like field and team sports or combat sports, but this is even true in powerlifting. Where if we have an emotional thought, whether it's negative or positive, it distorts our rationality. So if you think of your brain being separated into two separate brains, we have our emotional brain and our rational brain. Our emotional brain doesn't think clearly. Our rational brain thinks quickly and clearly. So if we're in a position where we need to make decisions, we want emotions to be out of it as much as humanly possible. So this is where the idea of judgment-free training comes into. Is we want to be able to keep the emotions at bay so our rational brain can come up with our best thought and decision in that current moment in time that allows us to maximize our potential in that moment in time. So if we want to develop high-level performance in the moment of what we're doing, we need our rational brain to be making those decisions. It also frees up energy for us to be able to put forth our best effort, because our brain is always going to try to prove itself right. And I'm going to kind of explain that in a number of ways here. So the first thing I'm going to do is like to draw this out, right? So another way of thinking about being in training judgment-free is being centered. And this is what this means. So pretend this is in the middle. So if I draw lines up and down there, this would be the center point, right? So if we think of this side as being negative and this side as being positive, and everything's on a spectrum, right? So let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2. Okay, so let's say this line gets more and more towards the negative side, right? So like to be extreme, let's say like 5 is like deep depression. And then 5 on the positive side is like high level manic, right? And then there's everything in between. So if you think of like the dichotomy of life in general, you can't have good without bad, right? So one of the things that you hear people say a lot is you can't succeed without failure. And this can be thought of in a couple of ways, right? So I think in a lot of situations where you hear people say, I had to fail so many times in order to succeed, right? So those failing, when we fail, they're just opportunities to learn, and you kind of use it, you kind of see it in that sense. But how would we know what success really is if we didn't know what failure is? The two of them can't exist without the other. So we can't just know success if we don't know failure. We can't just be happy if there is no sadness. Like they literally have to coexist because they give each other their definition, right? Like if everybody just was baseline happy all of the time, we wouldn't know that was happy because sadness doesn't exist. Right? So like this spectrum is necessary in order for us to be able to experience these various emotions in different situations that we go through throughout life. So what we want in training is we want to be centered, right? But this becomes a battle with the ego. This becomes a big battle with the ego at times. So there's this balancing act that's always trying to happen, but at the same time, right, you're experiencing the world through your own eyes and your own perceptions. And the ego is going to have a certain perception of yourself. So let's take an example. So Jess is over here eating a piece of pizza, drinking a Diet Pepsi, living her best life. But let's say Jess views herself as being really strong, right? But she doesn't try hard, she skips training sessions. Like the answers to all of your questions are always in your environment. Your world is constantly trying to give you that information, right? But you have to be open and willing to see that information in order to get better, right? So let's say Jess is like, yeah, I fucking work hard. I do everything I'm supposed to do. I train hard. And then she misses a rep. So her ego views herself as this certain person living in her world. But the experience in which she's actually living in that world is very different. It doesn't match up. So when she misses that rep, she's gonna kick rocks and blame me and everybody else for her failures because it can't be her, right? Because she views herself in a given light that if that information coming in, like your ego is just always going to want to affirm its stance, right? That I work hard, I do all these things, I deserve this PR. And when that doesn't happen, we get this negative experience. And our reaction tends to be very negative, but we're going to blame somebody else because our ego is telling us we're strong, and it needs to affirm itself in that given moment in time that it's right? So we have these prejudgments coming into the gym about who we are, what we're doing, and all of these things. So to put it, when I ask people like about training and stuff, and you have these conversations, there's certain things that always pop up. So like, here's a general statement I think that people make a lot. I want to be strong. But this can be interpreted in your mind in a number of different ways. So when I say I want to be strong, what's the first thing that you think? Like, what's the first thought that pops in your mind?
Physical strength.
But there's also, yeah, okay. So if I say I want to be strong, what does that mean for me in this current moment?
For me or for you?
For me. When you're just trying to interpret what I'm saying.
I still think physical, that you're saying I want to be strong.
Okay. Me saying I want to be strong, that's living somewhere out in the future, right? So what does that mean for me at this current moment in time is my brain can interpret that as I am not strong. So like, there's this certain attitude that we need to have at this given moment in time where it needs to be judgment free, but we need to also be in the moment. And when I talk about mindfulness, this is a huge concept to understand. It's not that I want to be strong. The right statement for me at this current moment in time, if I want to be in this center, is I am as strong as I am supposed to be in this very moment. Right? So when you hear me say a lot that lifters get the totals that they deserve, right? And you hear other coaches say this stuff too. You always get the outcomes you deserve. So if you change your statement to I am as strong as I am supposed to be in this current moment, right? That gets rid of all that prejudgment. So you're not judging yourself for past mistakes. You're not pushing yourself out to the future because you have this certain expectation, this certain place that you want to be. You're right where you are. So that helps center you, right? It's neither positive nor negative at that time. You're as strong as you're supposed to be in this current moment where you're standing, right? Very judgment free. And that's where it starts. Those statements, it needs to start there. So if our ego views us as being very different than who we are in this world, right? Than what our experiences are telling us who we are, right? So if I'm walking around and I'm like, I'm an elite power lifter in my head and I'm acting like I'm an elite power lifter, right? And this doesn't necessarily mean I just go around and I'm like, fuck you, I'm stronger than you. What this could turn out to, and this is what we see on the internet a lot, is you get a lifter, you're looking at their lift and RPEs they're using, and it's like, oh, this triple was an RPE 7, but you're looking at it and it's like, that's a 9 or a 10, right? They definitely didn't have 3 more reps, right? So they start using those types of situations to just show how much better they are than what the experiences are really telling them, right? So that in that moment when they're doing those sets, if that RPE 7's really a 9 or a 10, they're not being honest with themselves, right? But that's their ego affirming their arrogance at that moment in time. And they're not receptive to the information that the world's trying to tell them, right? That like, hey, this triple isn't an RPE 7. You need to be more honest with yourself, take in that information so that you can actually get better. You can use that information to get better. Another example of this is you'll see when people go to a competition and things don't go the way that they planned. They might have been training the same way in the past, right? Where it's like, this is an RPE 7, but it's really like a 9 or something. And then they have these estimated 1RMs that are very inflated. So their words in their ego showing them that this is who I am, but then all of a sudden the life experience comes through and you miss attempts on the platform. So then what you see is that squat wasn't high, my water cut went bad, the program was this or that, but the answer is always given to you. Like those answers have been given to you, you just weren't receptive to them throughout the entire training process. Like there are times you're gonna have to be aware enough to understand that like, hey, my numbers are taking a back seat. And then you have to reflect and ask why, right? So most programs, they're adequate enough. If a program has given somebody results over prolonged period of time, like I could name off countless people who've seen success with me over a 3 to 5 year period of time doing a program. The program's not the problem. Yes, of course, there's adaptations that need to come in the program, but the answer is in the person, right? And it's putting that ego aside, being in the moment and understanding that you are as strong as you were supposed to be in that current moment in time. And being receptive to the information that you're getting in each given moment in training. And I think this is often lost as we try to give up those moments, those learning experience to some algorithm in some Excel spreadsheet. It's not just, right? And if you do that and you're not honest with yourself and you put in those certain RPEs on that sheet and you put it into that algorithm is then going to support that negative ego. That ego that views you as somebody in this world who the information that you're receiving back, you're not that person. So I'll give a good example. Like, so right now my squat numbers seem like they're way down. And you can see this, and what I could do is I could be like, well, I haven't been touching heavier weight in the hole. I haven't been doing a lot of, I've been doing more box squats, not a lot. Like I could come up with all of these reasons why. I'm definitely not as confident in my squats. You can see it in the way that I'm approaching the lift. I'm slower on the way down. I'm fishing for depth. There's a lack of confidence there. It has nothing to do with what I was doing before. You don't get weaker from training. And I've been training consistently. I've missed 0 training days. So it's not that my squat has gotten worse because of the exercise selection of the program. It's my numbers are down because I'm not as confident in my squat as I was before. And I have to find a way to get back to that point. And of course, the program needs to kind of build that confidence with me at the same time. But I also need to look inward and be like, okay, here are the things I need to do. I need to understand that like I was able to hit these numbers before, no problem. I'm capable of hitting them now because I haven't missed training. But I need to believe that, and I need to give myself the right to do those difficult things. So each training session, I need to just stretch my skills just a little bit. And that's not just the physical skills, that's the mental skills at the same time. But if I was in this thought process of I could just blame it on a bunch of other things, a bunch of external pieces, and then just hope my mind's right by the time I get there. Like the answers are being given to me as I'm going through training. And you just got to be receptive to those answers, and you got to be willing to work on them. So another piece of like being centered, right? And this is a situation we see all of the time. There's always this balancing out that's going to happen. Right? Like I said before, you can't have good without bad. And you're not just going to have continual good, right? You're not going to have continual success. You can't. Everything always balances out. So for every good experience, you're going to have a bad one. For every success, there has to be a failure because of this balancing act that needs to happen. So I think a good example of this would be we hit a PR on a deadlift. And then we get excited and we want to add weight to that bar. Right? Because we're like, oh, that was easy, even though that was what was planned on the sheet, right? It's a 5-pound all-time PR. We're told 5 pounds at a time, walk away, you get some momentum into the next training session. But then what happens, right? You try to put more weight on the bar and then we miss. So you see yourself as like, let's say they hit a 353-pound deadlift as a PR. And you're like, I know I'm a 360-pound deadlifter in that moment in time. But then you put more weight on the bar. And then you miss. And now your ego's got this battle again where it's just bringing you back. No, you're not. You're a 353-pound deadlifter. But then you might make up these things like, oh, if I just went straight there, I would have hit it. So then you walk into a competition. And instead of putting the weight that you know you're capable of hitting under these circumstances, you stretch that by 2.5 or 5 kilos because you told yourself that, no, I can hit 360, 365 on this deadlift. I know I can. If I took different jumps, if I did this instead, if I ate a different breakfast or whatever it is, and then you miss it on the platform, right? There's more information telling you, no, you're not a 360, 365-pound deadlifter. You're a 353-pound deadlifter. But then it's like, oh, the weight cut, I was gassed out because I had to rush my warm-ups or whatever it is. There's always excuses. So then you tell yourself that, you use these other numbers, and then now you get into training, and if you're using RPEs, you know if you're trying to stretch what your max is at, this triple now at a 7 is really an 8 or a 9, but you got to tell yourself it's a 7 because you've told yourself that you're capable of this bigger deadlift, even though your experiences have told you otherwise. it makes it very hard to stay being honest with yourself in that situation. If you constantly tell yourself, I want to be strong, I want to do this, I want to do that, that also gets, like I was saying before, this gets interpreted as I am not strong. So if that's your ego will still try to affirm its position. So you're going to get these situations where you have an opportunity to potentially hit a PR, or you're challenged in a way that would go against your ego telling you that you aren't strong. It's going to want to confirm what it believes. Our brain does not like being wrong. So if you don't think you're strong in this moment and you're given that opportunity to hit a PR, you're more likely to miss that opportunity. Or you're more likely to probably not even load that weight on the bar, to cut your set short. You might be on the other end of that, like if you're using RPEs and you're doing triples, you might say that RPE 7 felt like an 8 or a 9 because you're confirming your bias that you're not strong. Like, ooh, this feels heavy today, right? That's that ego confirming that bias that you are not strong. That's why that statement of being, I am as strong as I am in this current moment in time, is really important to understand, because no matter which way you go on that spectrum, there's always going to be a balancing out. You're always going to try to confirm who you are. Like your experiences, there's no two ways around it. Like you need to be receptive to this information. You need to have confidence in all these other things. Of course, being more aggressive is probably going to yield better outcomes than being negative all of the time. But what happens in those situations, right? If you're on this end and you're always pushing, you think you are better than what you really are. Yes, it's going to push you to put more weight on the bar. You're going to be more likely to challenge yourself, but you're going to have these bigger falls. You're going to come to these situations where you have an opportunity, you think you are somebody that you're not, and you're going to have this big fall. And then when that big fall happens, what are you going to do? Right? Because now you're not who you think you are. The information you're getting back is very different. You're being told by the world you're not as good at this sport as you think you are. That frustration, that's where quitting happens, right? Where if we're always negative all the time, quitting just maybe happens because we don't enjoy it. Or maybe we just get in this like, oh, this is fine, I'll just do like this for fitness type stuff. What you need to also be aware of is people who have a way of swinging this balance for you, right? So if you're picking training partners, right? So if you're always more on the positive end and you have a training partner on the negative end, there's going to be this power struggle. Somebody's going to pull you closer to them, right? So like I think what you see with good leaders is they're able to pull people up at those times, right? Like the ones who feel down about themselves or whatever it is, they have these negative pictures of themselves or viewpoints of themselves. You'll have leaders that are able to pull them up. But at the same time, if you're surrounded by negative people, they can also pull you down. So you got to be really careful of that type of stuff from happening. And making sure, like one of the books that I recommend for people to read, like it's called The Energy Bus. And like they talk about how everybody needs to be on the same bus going in the same direction. You don't want these people who are just, what do they call them? Energy vampires. So these people sucking your energy from you. You don't want them to pull you out of a centered state into that negative state. And it's very easy to do. And obviously, like the more mental skills you have to stay balanced, the better off you're going to be in those types of situations. And competition tends to never happen in a perfect state. So you need this mindset and this understanding to be able to compete at your highest level so that your rational brain can be free to make the best decisions possible under those situations. And to be able to be receptive to the information that your world is telling you. Every training day, at a competition, sometimes you need to pivot, like things just aren't going the way you may have anticipated them to go. You need to be receptive to that information so you can make the best decisions, so that you can be the strongest you are on that given day. So you can go 9 for 9 and put up your best total under those circumstances where it may not be where all the stars are aligning or it may not be what you anticipated it to be. So for us, like we take heavy singles all the time, so I think we have a really good idea of who we are under those situations. But still, there are times where it's just not going well, or it's going really well, and you have to be receptive to that information, be able to make those adjustments. But we always want to be in this centered point. And you need to understand that everything has And I think it's really important that you understand this. Everything will always balance out. It's not always good and it's not always bad. One can't exist without the other. We literally need the bad to experience the good. We need the failures to experience the success. And it's all in your perspective on being balanced. So if you have a missed rep, understand that it's a learning opportunity, right? So if you're judgment free and your emotional brain is still shut down and your rational brain is on, you're going to view it as a learning opportunity. You're going to be receptive to the information that it's telling you. You're going to be able to honestly reflect upon it and make the best decisions possible for you to learn from it and to get better from it. And it's even the same at the other end. Like when you hit a PR, not getting too high when that happens so that your rational brain still turns on and you can still take from it. It's, yes, okay, this is what worked. This is what will continue to work. These are the things I need to work on. And the process is the same. You still need to focus on the next repetition the same way that you did on the previous ones that led up to that PR. So we need that rational brain to make those decisions, and we need this centered approach to training in order for it to be the most effective it can be. And this is where distractions become really negative. It takes a lot of mental effort and energy to focus all of our attention in one way. So if we're really trying to build a certain like neural pathway of efficiency and effectiveness and strength within a given lift, if we're constantly pulling our attention one way or the other, we're constantly out of balance, right? Yeah, maybe you're watching something and it's like, it's Rocky IV and he's winning the fight at the end, or, you get a negative text or email or something from a client, a friend, whatever it is. Like we're constantly going to be pulled out of this balanced state in training. So like distractions become extremely debilitating in a training environment. So if you're constantly distracted, you're not centered in training and you're not going to make the best decisions, and you're not going to have all of your effort and energy focused into you getting better in that current moment in time. So if this is really important to you and you have lofty goals in this sport to be competitive at a national or international level or to break records at some point, you need to have the understanding that you can't be distracted and do it. You need to have your focus, your attention in a balanced state, be receptive to all the information that your environment's giving you, because nonstop you're being flooded with information that can help you get better. But you need to be receptive to it. If your ego is telling you one thing, but the world's telling you something else, at some point there's going to be a massive collision that's going to shatter your viewpoints of who you are in this world. And it's not going to work out for the better. And this is whether your ego is giant and it's telling you you're the greatest thing since sliced bread, or whether your ego is telling you that you want to be strong, but in this current moment you're not strong. No matter what ego you have, it's going to try to confirm its bias. It does not want to be wrong. So that's why it's so important that you're not on either side of this and you're just understand that you're exactly where you're supposed to be. So I say this to my lifters a lot, that there is no good or bad, there just is. Bad, good, this is where just is exists. And that's where you need to be constantly in order to perform at your highest level. And it takes doing this over and over and over. And the thing is, negative thoughts will come in, positive emotions will come in. You're human. It's literally going to happen. So one, your subconscious brain is always surveying the environment for negative things that could cost us our survival. It's literally its job. So those negative thoughts are going to come in, because clearly we're not in a world where our lives are threatened in a constant state, but the brain is still programmed that way. So negative thoughts are going to come in. We need to be aware of the negative thoughts coming in and pull ourselves back into a centered space. When, we could get arrogant, right? There's a point of being confident, but then there's a point of we start pushing into the arrogance side. The world's going to help set you straight in that case, because at some point that information is going to come in and it's going to pull you back down to earth. But if you want to hold on to that arrogance, you're going to blame everybody else for the issues that you're having. But then we need to notice when our brain's getting too much into that positive side of things, and those positive emotions are distorting our view of ourselves, that we really are in this world, and we got to pull ourselves back in. So this is constantly happening. And it's a skill that needs to be trained, and it's something that requires a lot of energy. Most people don't have a massive ability to continually bring themselves back into a centered point. And you got to think, like with our lives, like being in an amateur sport, this isn't all we do. So if you have a stressful work life, school, and you have a bunch of other things going on, you have a finite amount of attention that you're capable of utilizing to get back there. So you need to be as relentless in your recovery of this stuff as you are in your training. And you have to be so aware of it, and you have to train it. And like there are easy ways. If you're easily distracted, stay away from your phone for 30 minutes. Put it somewhere and like just strengthen your willpower not to grab it. But don't fucking grab it. Be disciplined enough that you're not going to actually grab it. But this is an actual skilled training process of being centered in training. And if you're not here, if you're here, yeah, things might go well for a period of time, but there is going to be a crash and burn. If you're on this side of it all the time, it's going to be very hard to make the progress that you want yourself to make over a period of time. You got to be right here, right in the center, judgment-free, training there. And like living your life there, if you're trying to perform high at work, whatever it is, there's this constant struggle of being centered in our day-to-day lives. And it's never going to be perfect. It's always going to swing left and right, and it's just being aware, pulling yourself back, and just doing those reps over and over. Do we have questions? Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Are you just saying that?
No, it does make sense. I mean, we have these conversations pretty often.
Are you?
What were you gonna say?
No, go ahead.
You were talking about your squat personally, and how you need to get confidence back to perform a little bit better. What do you tell yourself in training sessions when you're starting to feel low confidence?
So for me, number one, you can't just tell yourself, I got this, right? Because here's the problem. If you're already lacking confidence and you're like, I got this, and you try to force a weight, right? So you put a weight on there that's probably a stretch for your current skill set because you want to get it all back today and get all that confidence today, right? So you try to stretch it a little bit and you tell yourself you got this and then you miss. You're confirming your lack of confidence. So that lack of confidence strengthens in that situation. So it's really important that, again, we're centered when we're making these decisions. So we're putting the right weight on the bar. So we're not strengthening the negativity. We're literally building these little steps. So it's being in the moment. And one of the things that I tell myself is I've earned the right to attempt this weight. I've earned the right to miss this weight if I do, because I'm challenging myself. So I set myself up that if I'm in a position where I do miss a repetition, I literally tell myself, hey, this isn't bad. This is a good learning opportunity for me to understand where I am at this point and what I need to work on to get where I need to be. And it's not shattering my mindset. I'm not putting myself in a situation that's going to strengthen my lack of confidence. But all confidence is it's self-talk, but it's got to be believable to your brain. You can bullshit everybody else, but you can't bullshit yourself. And so you got to truly believe that you have the ability to attempt that repetition, and just understand that like you are challenging your skill set enough that there is risk, and the risk of missing is there. But you've earned the right to miss, and you're going to learn from it if you do. Or if you hit it, you know you're challenging your skill set enough, and then you're setting yourself up to challenge it a little bit more the next time. So it's making sure that I don't get into a situation where I try to get it all back at once. So planning my lifts accordingly like that. So like in the last set, I used some heavier bands. So now I'll use something where I can just get a little bit more weight on the bar. And then I'll use something where I can just get a little bit more weight on the bar. And we'll constantly just kind of build it up that way, because you got to earn the right to do difficult. So if right now you don't have the right to do difficult, and you try to do difficult, you're literally going to just keep strengthening that negative mindset. So for me, it's just making sure I'm staying in the moment. I'm making good decisions. I'm finding those small wins. I'm learning from those opportunities that present themselves, and then I'm constantly just trying to get better from there and just build it up from there. But it's just this repeatable process. But I think in most cases what you see is you see people try to force these numbers where it's like, I got to get this all back today. So then they try to get it all back today, and it doesn't go well, and it just continues to be this like negative cycle of confirming your negative bias towards yourself and your strength. and it just fuels that fire. So it's making sure you're getting those small wins. And sometimes those small wins have to come from somewhere else other than the competition lifts. So, you know, it might be a good morning PR. It might be, I'm going to do this with less rest between sets. Like, you're not necessarily having to go up and weight all of the time. So like for me, in the previous block, week 1 was high, week 3 was better. So it was hitting the same weight, but hitting it with better depth, and I was in a better position, and like, it's just building those small wins. That's all it is. Anything else? All right, you can follow me on Instagram. It's KWKN, our team, Precision Powerlifting Systems. You can follow Jay Birdie too, at Jay Birdie.